Got a group text from Mom around noon. Emergency family meeting. Thursday, 7 p.m. Evan needs her help. No context. No hello. Just that. Typical. I sat in my old Honda Civic at the end of the driveway, the one with the duct-taped mirror and peeling bumper sticker from a startup I shut down 2 years ago. In front of me, the house looked exactly the same, suburban, smug, and perfectly trimmed. The porch lights glowed warm like this was still home, but I hadn't called it that in years. 3 cars lined the driveway. Dad's charcoal Audi, Mom's white Lexus, and my sister KENDRA's black Range Rover. Every one of them leased, spotless, and selected for maximum prestige. My Civic stuck out like a rusted thumb. I killed the engine and let the silence settle. My name's Evan Marsh. I'm 32. Born and raised here in Walnut Creek, but now I live in a studio apartment above a Vietnamese bakery in downtown Oakland. 2 years ago, I walked away from a 6-figure engineering job in Palo Alto to build a software company that everyone swore would crash within the year. At every family gathering since, they've referred to it as Evan's situation, like I'm recovering from a stroke or jail time. My phone buzzed. Rachel, CFO, Bloomberg story drops at 8 p.m. You ready? I grinned. They think I'm failing. What they don't know is that tonight, while they're all here to stage an intervention, Bloomberg is dropping a front-page piece on me and the company I built from the ground up, Vortex Systems. The timing wasn't just lucky. I planned it down to the hour. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Same hoodie I've worn 3 days straight. Dark circles under my eyes. Hair that hasn't seen product in weeks. They're going to take one look at me and think I'm barely hanging on. Good. Let them. I grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat and walked toward the house. Each step felt like a countdown. I could already hear them inside. Wine glasses clinking. Someone laughing too loudly. Probably Clark. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there in a navy blazer and pearl earrings. The kind of outfit you wear when you want to look concerned but composed. Glad you made it, she said, like this was a dentist appointment I was late for. I got your text, I said. What's going on? Come in. We'll talk in the living room. The air inside smelled like potpourri and old money. Same beige walls, same couch I spilled cranberry juice on when I was 10. Dad sat stiffly in his recliner, arms crossed. KENDRA and Clark were curled up on the couch like smug bookends. Aunt Ruth had somehow already settled into her favorite corner chair, sipping tea and looking like she was waiting for the show to start. No one smiled. I looked around the room. They thought I was here to get talked out of my situation. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Mom waved me toward the couch like she was seating a guest at a funeral. I sat down on the edge, right across from Dad, who hadn't so much as blinked since I walked in. KENDRA gave me a tight smile, the kind people give stray dogs they're not sure are safe. Clark looked up from his phone long enough to nod like we were colleagues about to enter a meeting. Aunt Ruth kept sipping tea, pinky out, like we were at the Ritz. Evan, Mom started, folding her hands neatly in her lap. We wanted to do this face to face. You've been on our minds lately. Dad cleared his throat. A lot, actually. I nodded slowly. Okay. KENDRA jumped in. We just thought. You know, it's time to talk some sense into you. Clark chuckled, setting his phone down. An intervention, he said, like he was announcing the halftime show. I leaned back, didn't say a word, just glanced at the clock over the mantel. 7:03. Mom pressed on. You're 32, and you walked away from a secure job at one of the most respected companies in the country. Just up and quit, Dad added. No plan, no backup. There was a plan, I said quietly. She waved it off. Starting some software thing no one's heard of? That's not a plan, sweetheart. That's a gamble. KENDRA jumped in like she'd been waiting for that line. It's not that we don't support you, but there's a difference between chasing dreams and living in denial. Clark picked it up like they'd rehearsed this. Startups are cute in your 20s, but by your 30s, you should be thinking long-term. Stability, retirement, health insurance. People rely on you, Evan, Mom added. What if something happens to you? That one stung a little. They didn't know about the 22 employees who did rely on me, or the hundreds of contractors whose families were fed through our platform, or the fact that I paid full health coverage for all of them, including dependents, without any outside funding. They didn't ask. They never had. I checked the time again. 7:11. I just worry, Mom said. Soft now. You used to be so driven. Now it's like you're drifting. Not drifting, I said. Building. Dad frowned. Building what? Debt? Stress. KENDRA leaned forward. You know, Clark had his own startup once. Oh boy. Clark puffed his chest like he'd been waiting all night. Forefront Labs, remember? We had a great run, year and a half. You got bought out, KENDRA said proudly. For parts, I muttered. Not loud. Just loud enough. Clark didn't hear, or pretended not to. My advice? Pivot early. Don't chase a failing product. Know when to call it. I looked him dead in the eye. Didn't you pitch your new idea to Vortex Systems a few weeks ago? He blinked. What? We get hundreds of pitches a month, I said calmly. Yours came in under Clark Jensen Consulting. Real estate blockchain tool, right? Clark's mouth opened, then closed. We passed, I said. Tech wasn't there. Team was weak. KENDRA flushed crimson. That's not. He didn't know that was your company. He should have checked. The room went quiet. Even Aunt Ruth stopped sipping. 7:19. Almost there. I leaned back, calm as ever, and watched them scramble to figure out who exactly they were lecturing. They thought I was crashing. They had no idea I was just circling for effect. In less than an hour, the world was going to know exactly who I was, and they were going to wish they'd listened sooner. KENDRA's phone buzzed first. She glanced down, absent-minded at first, like she was just checking a group chat. But then her face changed. Her eyebrows lifted. Her eyes locked on the screen, frozen. Slowly, she turned to look at me. Evan, she said, her voice thin. Why is your face on Bloomberg? I didn't answer. I just sat back and waited. Dad leaned forward, confused. What is she talking about? KENDRA shoved the phone toward him. Look at this. Dad took it, adjusting his glasses. His jaw went tight. What the hell? Mom, mid-sip of wine, set her glass down so hard it sloshed over the rim. Is this Evan? Clark leaned in behind Dad. That can't be real. Aunt Ruth finally broke her silence. What does it say? Dad read aloud, slow and stumbling. Evan Marsh, 32, founder and CEO of Vortex Systems, a data intelligence startup specializing in AI-powered real-time compression, valued at $2.7 billion. I cleared my throat. Actually, the new valuation after last week's merger is 3.1. They all turned to look at me like I had just announced I was from Mars. You're joking, Mom said. That's not. Are they serious? I reached down, unzipped my laptop bag, and placed my MacBook on the coffee table, turned it around, tapped the screen a few times, and opened our internal dashboard. A glowing map populated in real time, data nodes across 4 continents. This, I said, is Vortex Core Engine. We developed proprietary compression architecture that allows live data to move 30% faster with 70% less bandwidth. Telecom companies were our first clients. Now, it's being rolled out across healthcare, defense, and even logistics. I paused. We're integrated with 4 major telecom giants already. That dashboard updates every 60 seconds. No one spoke. You built this? Dad asked finally. I nodded. From scratch. But you drive a Civic, KENDRA blurted out. And I live in the smallest unit of a building I own outright, I added. Less overhead, more focus. Clark looked like he had been slapped. So when you rejected my pitch, I was being polite, I said. But now that you've lectured me for 20 minutes on pivot strategies, let's be honest, your idea had holes. And your financials were sloppy. KENDRA's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Mom was blinking fast, like she was trying to wake up. Why didn't you tell us? I shrugged. Why would I? Dad sat back, looking at the tablet like it was radioactive. $3 billion. 3.1. I repeated. Not that it matters. The important part is, I'm not drifting. I'm not failing. I'm building something you couldn't even begin to understand because you never asked. Clark cleared his throat. Well, I mean, this is obviously we're proud. No, I said. You're shocked? That's different. Silence again. Thick and heavy. Aunt Ruth spoke softly. Well, I always knew you were clever. I gave her a half smile. Thanks, Ruth. KENDRA suddenly laughed, high-pitched and brittle. I mean, well, I can't believe you didn't say anything. You could have at least given us a heads up. You gave me an intervention, I said. I gave you a feature article. I closed the laptop. The map kept pulsing on the screen for a few seconds before fading to black. They didn't say much after that. Mom stared at her wine. Dad just kept muttering numbers under his breath. KENDRA looked like she was trying to remember if she'd ever said anything nice about me in public. I stood up and slung the bag over my shoulder. You'll probably want to read the whole article, I said on my way to the door. It's a long one. Some nice photos, too. And just like that, I left them sitting in the living room, jaws slack, surrounded by fancy snacks and the wreckage of their assumptions. I didn't need their approval. I built something they couldn't even imagine. And now they were finally seeing it. The house emptied out like someone had pulled a fire alarm. KENDRA was the first to stand, muttering something about being so proud, but barely looking me in the eye. Clark followed, avoiding my gaze completely. He looked like he needed a drink or a therapist, maybe both. Aunt Ruth gave me an awkward side hug and whispered, "They'll come around," like I needed consolation. Dad walked past me in silence. Not angry, not congratulatory, just stunned. Mom lingered at the door, clutching her wine glass like it was the only thing holding her together. I just wish you'd told us sooner, she said softly. I didn't reply. Back in my car, I sat for a minute before turning the key. My dashboard lit up like it always did. Check engine, low tire pressure, the usual reminders that I hadn't changed a thing. Then the messages started coming in. First, one from Kendra. Kendra, I'm honestly so impressed. We should talk more. Maybe there's ways to collaborate. Then Clark, of all people. Clark, let's grab coffee. I've got a new pitch. Think you'll want to hear it. Then Mom. Mom, we're so proud of you. Truly, call me when you get home. Dad followed shortly after. Dad, just read the full article. Incredible stuff. Evan, let's talk soon. I let the phone sit face down on the passenger seat. It buzzed again. Rachel, CFO, markets reacting fast. CEO panel wants you on next month. I smiled at that one. Next morning, I walked into Vortic HQ through the private garage entrance. The building glass, steel, minimalist signage was mine. My name wasn't just on the company letterhead. It was etched in metal in the lobby. Evan Marsh, founder and CEO. The security guard nodded as I entered. Morning, Mr. Marsh. Morning, Jalen. Elevator to the top floor. My corner office. Maya, my executive assistant, was already there with my calendar pulled up and coffee exactly how I liked it. I set my bag down and shrugged off my jacket, the same black windbreaker they all made fun of last night. Big night? She asked, handing me my schedule. Family meeting, I said. You could say it got educational. Maya smiled. Let me guess. They're all texting now? Like stockbrokers in a crash. She laughed. You want me to start filtering your inbox? Already done. I looked out over the city, 34 floors below. My name was on the lease. My ideas powered what happened in this building. And for the first time, no one was going to make me feel small for that. They used to say I was wasting my potential. Now they were all just hoping to catch a ride. Calendar pinged at 9:58 a.m. 10 a.m. L. Harmon, guest access approved. I stared at the name for a second. Had to read it twice. Laura Harmon. The ex. The one who told me, point blank, startups are cute until they fail. The one who broke off our engagement with a rehearsed monologue about needing someone more stable. That was 2.5 years ago, back when I was living on instant noodles and writing code until sunrise. I hadn't heard from her since. Maya's voice came through the intercom. She's in the lobby. Wants to catch up. Said your mom mentioned where to find you. Of course she did. Let her in, I said. Give her the glass room. Already on it. 2 minutes later, Laura walked in like she still owned every room she entered. Pencil skirt, designer heels, hair in that precise bun she used to redo twice before leaving the house. Same practice smile. Same fake warmth. Evan, she said, arms slightly out like I was supposed to hug her. Look at you. I stayed seated. Laura. She faltered for half a beat, then recovered. This place is amazing. I read the article. Congratulations are definitely in order. I nodded once. Thanks. She looked around the room like it was a museum. Your mom said you'd done well, but I had no idea it was all this. Vortic is everywhere right now. My firm's even reviewing one of your contracts. I waited. I just thought we could catch up, she continued, lowering her voice. It's been a while. We were important to each other, you know? You said I was reckless, I said evenly, that I didn't understand how the real world worked. Her smile froze. I leaned forward. You said, and I quote, dreams are cute until the rent's due. That was she started, laughing awkwardly. I didn't mean. You did, I said. She blinked. Well, clearly, I was wrong. I tapped a button on my desk. Maya. Her voice came in instantly. Yes, Evan. Can you walk our guest out? Laura's eyes widened. Wait, what? Security will escort you to the elevator, Maya said, already standing by the door. Laura stood up. Stiff now. Evan, I came here in good faith. You don't have to be cruel. This isn't cruelty, I said. It's closure. She opened her mouth, but Maya was already beside her. This way. They walked out without another word. I watched from behind the glass wall as Laura's heels clicked against the floor, her posture tight, her eyes darting for some invisible exit strategy. Back when she left, I thought I'd never be good enough. Now I didn't even need to get up from my chair. Maya returned a moment later, a small smile tugging at her lips. She didn't make it to the elevator alone. I updated the visitor protocol. Thanks, I said, turning back to my screen. Old chapters close easy when you're the one holding the pen. The boardroom was full by 9:01 a.m. 12 men and women in tailored suits sat around the polished walnut table, laptops open, espresso cups half full, postures stiff with anticipation. It was the quarterly strategy meeting, but this one felt different. Since the Bloomberg story hit, their curiosity had shifted to reverence. The same investors who used to question every decision I made now hung on every word like it was gospel. I stood at the head of the table, remote in hand, and tapped to the first slide. Let's start with the new quantum model. The screen displayed a sprawling graph, curves shooting upward like a mountain range. Real-time data showed usage spikes, latency reductions, and energy savings, all in bright, digestible color. This wasn't a prediction. It was proof. This isn't our future, I said, pacing slowly across the room. This is our warm-up. A few murmurs of agreement. One of the older board members, Harold Greeley, nodded but kept scribbling in his notebook. He'd been one of our earliest backers, and one of the most skeptical. He'd also been KENDRA's godfather, which used to mean he saw me more as a favor than a founder. Rachel, our CFO, tapped her screen. We ran projections last night. Even at a conservative growth rate, Q3 revenue could double, possibly more if our EU partners finalize this week, which they will, I said. I closed the final compliance gap yesterday. More murmurs. Someone whistled quietly. I paused and looked around the room. A year ago, some of you didn't believe in this product. You asked if it was too ambitious, too unstable, too early. No one met my eyes, but a few shifted uncomfortably. And I get it. Vision without results is just noise. I clicked to the next slide, global partnerships. Names that hadn't been public before. Now they were. The boardroom went dead silent. Gentlemen, ladies, I said, we are past noise. One of the investors raised a hand, hesitant. Samir Patel, usually blunt, occasionally annoying. Evan, incredible work. I think we're all impressed. I have to ask, given recent press and attention, are you concerned about family distractions? There it was. A few heads turned subtly toward Harold, who suddenly found his coffee very interesting. I didn't flinch. My family isn't on the cap table, I said. Their opinions don't steer this ship. Silence. Then Rachel chuckled. Guess that answers that. A few people laughed with her, cautiously at first, then louder. The tension popped like a bubble. Even Samir smiled and nodded. Harold finally looked up, gave me a stiff nod. Approval, or at least surrender. I leaned on the table, hands flat. If anyone here needs reassurance about who's in charge, speak now. No one did. Meeting adjourned 15 minutes early. When I stepped back into my office, Maya handed me a bottle of water and smiled. You killed it. They needed a reminder, I said. Outside, the Vortic logo gleamed against the morning sun. It didn't just mean power. It meant no one else would ever tell me what I was worth again. Maya knocked lightly on the glass wall. Your sister's in the lobby. I looked up from my screen. KENDRA. She won't leave. I sighed. Where is she? Meeting room 2. Cold chairs, no coffee. I smirked. Perfect. Let her wait. 2 hours passed. Emails, 2 interviews, 1 investor call. I made her sit through all of it. When I finally walked into the meeting room, KENDRA stood up like a student called to the principal's office. The room was intentionally uncomfortable. Metal chairs, no windows, AC on full blast. She rubbed her arms when I came in, like she was just now noticing the chill. Hey, she said, thanks for seeing me. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. You've got 10 minutes. Her smile wavered. Evan, come on. We're family. You didn't think that last week. She blinked. That's not fair. Really? I leaned forward, because I sat through an hour-long lecture about how irresponsible I was, while Clark, your precious husband, gave me advice on how to fail less. Her jaw tensed. Clark didn't know. Clark pitched his startup to us, I said, and we rejected it. 3 weeks before the intervention. She looked away. You want to talk about fair? I asked. Let's talk about how your husband spent 2 years bad-mouthing me to VCs. I've got emails. I've got voicemails. You knew. I didn't, she started, but stopped. Okay, maybe I heard some things. He called me unstable. Said I was burning investor money like a bonfire. That was 2 months before I closed Series B. And while that was happening, you let everyone believe I was crashing. KENDRA's voice cracked. I just didn't know it was this serious. You didn't care, I corrected. You liked being the golden child. The responsible one. The one who made Mom proud. She stared at the table. And now what? I asked. You want a fresh start? A chance to collaborate? Like your text said? She hesitated. You're building something huge, Evan. I just want to be part of it. I crossed my arms. You want to be part of it because you can't stand that I left you behind. Her eyes flashed. That's not true. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Laid it on the table. You know what this is? She didn't answer. It's the ownership documents for Fairwind Property Group. You know, the firm that holds your mortgage. She blinked. What? I bought it. Quietly. Last month. After the Bloomberg story dropped. She looked like I'd slapped her. You own the company that holds the note on your house, I finished. So, if I wanted to call in that debt, I could. Today. She went silent. The fake confidence drained from her face. But I won't, I added. Because unlike you and Clark, I don't weaponize people's lives. Kendra's voice was barely above a whisper. Evan, I messed up. Yeah, I said. You did. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. I'm sorry, she said. Really? I stood up. You want a relationship with me again? Start by remembering I'm not the screw-up in this family. As I reached the door, she asked, so, can we talk again sometime? I looked over my shoulder. Earn it. Maya poked her head in just before lunch. Your dad's downstairs. I looked up from my desk. Suit and tie. She shook her head. Jeans. No jacket. Been waiting 2 hours. I leaned back in my chair. That didn't sound like the man who raised me. That sounded like someone who came to listen. Send him up. 2 minutes later, the door opened slowly. Dad stepped inside holding something flat in his hands. He looked smaller without the usual armor. No expensive blazer. No polished shoes. Just a windbreaker and worn-out sneakers. Hey, he said. Hey. He held up the thing he was carrying. Found this in the garage. It was a photo. Me, age 11, standing in front of a science fair trifold, grinning next to a rat's nest of wires and a blinking homemade circuit board. You remember that? He asked. Yeah, that was my first neural net prototype. He sat down, carefully placing the photo on the table between us. I didn't get it back then. Hell, I still don't fully understand what you built here. I didn't say anything, just waited. He reached into his bag and pulled out a manila folder. But I've been trying. Inside were old patents I'd filed, PDFs of pitch decks from the early days of Vortic, even conference transcripts from a panel I spoke on 2 years ago in Berlin. I had to pull some strings to get some of these, he admitted. I was stunned. I spent the last week reading everything I could, he continued. I stayed up till 2 last night watching a video where you explained compression mapping using paper clips and a whiteboard. I remembered that video. It had maybe 300 views. I thought you didn't care, I said quietly. I didn't understand, he corrected. That's on me. He looked down at the photo. When you said you were starting your own company, I thought you were running from something. From stability, from responsibility. I never thought maybe you were running towards something bigger. I swallowed hard. I didn't need you to believe in me. I just needed you to stop getting in the way. He nodded. I see that now. There was a long pause. Then he said the last thing I ever expected. I want to understand it. Evan, for real. I don't want to play catch-up anymore. I want in. Not for your money. Not for your headlines. I want to sit at the table and learn. I leaned back, arms crossed. This isn't a hobby, Dad. I know. You don't get a seat unless you put in the work. I'm ready to do that. I looked him in the eyes. For once, I didn't see the guy who used to say things like, you should have gone to business school. I didn't see the skeptic who made me doubt myself every time I pitched an idea. I saw a man who finally was willing to listen. What changed? I asked. He tapped the photo. I've been holding on to that kid for a long time. Always thought he'd burn out, that he was dreaming too big. Turns out, I was thinking too small. I exhaled slowly. All right, I said. You want a seat at the table? I'll save you one. But you come as a learner, not as my boss, not as the guy who thinks he knows better. He nodded, eyes a little glassy. Deal. I stood up, walked him to the elevator. As the doors opened, I handed him a guest badge. Welcome to Vortic, Dad. He looked down at the badge like it weighed 10 pounds. Thanks, son. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. I sent the invitation out Monday morning. Subject: dinner, Thursday night at Vortic HQ. Note: full building tour at 6. Dinner served at 7. No plus ones. Clark doesn't get in. No emojis. No small talk. Just facts. Mom replied within 5 minutes. Mom, absolutely. I'll make my signature lemon pie. Then another. Unless that's too casual for the office. Dad followed shortly after. Dad, we'll be there. Mom's been taking online courses to understand your tech. You changed the world, Evan. We just didn't know you were doing it. That one hit different. By Thursday night, the building was spotless. Maya ran a tight ship. LED nameplates for each seat. A catered spread from the top restaurant in the city. Tech demos on every floor. This wasn't just a dinner. This was a guided tour through the empire they used to think was a pipe dream. I met them at the security desk myself. Mom wore pearls again, but her eyes looked different. Softer, cautious. Dad shook my hand like I was a client. Aunt Ruth gave me a hug and whispered, proud of you, baby. Like she'd always been in my corner, even if it wasn't true. KENDRA came alone. Clark's not invited, she said without being asked. I told him that. Good, I said, handing her a badge. Let's keep it that way. We walked the floors, showed them the data center, the pitch theater, the team breakout spaces. Mom asked questions about compression. KENDRA stared too long at the revenue graph, like she was trying to calculate how many bad takes she'd made over the years. At dinner, I stood up before anyone touched their plates. I used to sit in your living room while you told me I was reckless, I said. That I didn't have a real plan. That I was throwing away my future. No one spoke. And now you're sitting in mine. Dad gave a slow nod. We deserve that. Mom looked down at her plate. You get to be part of this again, I continued. But you don't get to rewrite history. I didn't build this with your help. I built it in spite of your doubt. KENDRA swallowed hard. We were wrong. I know. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then I added, by the way, I bought out Clark's debts last week. Quietly. Restructured the terms. He'll be getting a surprise in the mail. KENDRA blinked. You what? Let's call it a preemptive boundary. He doesn't get to pitch to my board and poison my name behind the scenes. You didn't have to. I know, I said, but I wanted to. Dad let out a low whistle. Damn. I looked around the table, my voice even. Next time you want to know what I'm building, ask. Don't assume. Don't gossip. Just ask. Mom reached for the lemon pie. It's my first time baking without sugar. I looked it up. Tech companies care about glycemic stuff, right? I smiled. It's a data floor, Mom. No shoes. But pie? Pie's allowed. This wasn't the family dinner they were used to. This time, I wasn't the one defending myself. They were the ones trying to earn their place. The office was quiet after 10. The kind of stillness that made the glass walls feel like a cocoon. Most of the team had gone home hours ago, but I was still there. Hoodie on, shoes off, feet up on the edge of my desk. I stared at the article framed on the wall. Engineer turned mogul shifts AI future. Vortex Systems redefines data flow. Right beneath it, I pinned something new tonight. A photo, curled at the edges, faded just slightly. Me at 11 years old, standing awkwardly in front of a science fair trifold. That old circuit board glowing next to me. My smile too wide for my face. I looked ridiculous. I looked proud. That kid had no idea what he was doing. But he didn't wait for permission. He just built. Maya tapped lightly on the doorframe. Your mom called. Again. I looked over. What's the count? 3 calls, 2 voicemails, and 1 text asking if she can bring pie next Thursday. I laughed. Let her. Just remind her, it's a tech building. No shoes on the data floor. Maya grinned. Already updated the front desk protocol. She stepped in and handed me a folder. Final draft of the Q3 strategy. You want to review it tonight? I flipped it open. A roadmap. Numbers, arrows, ideas scribbled into the margins from the last leadership sprint. But my eyes landed on the last page. Initiative, Vortex Seed Circle. Objective, identify and fund first-gen founders building outside traditional networks. Maya tilted her head. Still going forward with it? I nodded. We reinvest in the overlooked. People like me. People no one saw coming. You'll have a line out the door. Good, I said. Let them in. She started to leave, then paused. You know, you don't have to prove anything anymore. I looked back at the photo on the wall. I'm not proving anything. I'm paving it forward. She smiled. See you tomorrow, Evan. Night, Maya. She pulled the door shut behind her. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the room. This office used to feel too big for me. Now it felt like an engine, humming ready. Everything I'd built, every code push, every sleepless night, every brush off from family, every eye roll, every rejection, it was all fuel. And I'd turned it into velocity. I used to dream of making it. Now I designed the dreams others chase. And this was just the beginning.